Good evening, guys. Welcome to TalentBlazer, India's latest edtech platform that is there to help you at every stage of your career. Now, I'm your teacher and mentor in this journey, and I am covering UGC NET Paper 2 Commerce. The subject code for the same is 08. And in the last video, I've started Unit 10, Income Tax and Corporate Tax Planning. It is an important unit for you guys to prepare for your UGC NET exams, and your UGC NET exams will be going to held in June. So I hope everyone who is watching the video is very much dedicated towards giving the examination this June and preparing well and hope they do get the JRF in their first attempt or whichever attempt they are going to give in this June attempt. Right. So we are covering like in this lecture I'll cover Unit 10 Income Tax and Corporate Tax Planning. And there is some doubts within the students that they actually think that do they have to go through all the practical problems that they went through while studying this subject in their UG or in PG. So the answer for this question is no. You should have the knowledge of solving the practical problems, but you don't have to go through each and every question because the examination is of such nature. You will be getting most likely an MCQ based question, not a full fledged practical question to be solved in that examination. So you have to prepare accordingly. You have to be smart in making your choices. And I will request you to prepare accordingly and prepare smartly so that you clear this examination and don't focus upon getting each and everything right. Right. So that's not the priority. The priority is to clear the examination well. Right. So in this class, we'll start with from where we left in the last video. So those who haven't watched the previous video, do give it a watch because you will be able to relate with this one. And taxation is a thing that it has to be in a flow. It's not like you can start from anywhere. You have to make sure that you are going and following a sequence. So we'll start with residence and citizenship. In the last class, I talked about what an SSC is, what is an assessment year, what is a previous year, and I talked about briefly about residency and citizenship. So what usually happens for income tax and income tax purpose alone, a country like for India, in case of India, you will be charged tax on the basis that you were the resident of India for a while, right? So there is a difference between residence and citizenship. For example, if I am a Indian citizen because I am born there, I have got the Indian citizenship, and I am residing in UK, I'm residing in US, I'm residing in Germany. So now, because I'm residing in other countries, I'm a resident of those countries and I'm a citizen of Indian country. So there is a difference. I'm residing there for a while now. Let's suppose for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. So I'm residing there. Let's take the example of USA. So I am residing in USA for last 3 years. So I'm the resident of USA, but still I'm a citizen of India. But let's suppose I continue living there in USA for a while now, like after 3, 4 years or 5 or 6 years, and I am being offered citizenship of USA. So if I take citizenship of USA, I have to denounce my citizenship of India because as per Indian Citizenship Act, I cannot hold dual citizenship. It's allowed in many countries, but if you are Indian citizen, you cannot hold any other citizenship as well. So you can either be Indian citizen or not. There is not a chance that you can either be Indian citizen, you can either be US citizen. There are few countries in which that is allowed, but not in case of India. So while we are talking about the scope of Income Tax Act, we have to remember that we are particularly focusing on residentship, not citizenship. So if I am resident of USA, I won't be paying tax in India because I wasn't residing in India for that while. But let's suppose someone who is UK citizen, someone who is US citizen has been living or residing in India for a while. So they have to pay taxes in India irrespective whether their citizenship belongs to India or not. Right. So the scope of total income of an SSE is determined with reference to his residential status in India in the previous year. Because let's suppose we are talking about the assessment year of 2022 and 23, right? In this assessment year, we will be talking about the previous year of 2021 to 2022, right? So that is the previous year, and in this year 2022 to 2023, we are assessing about the previous year. The previous year is the year back. Tax incidence of an assessee depends upon his residential status rather than on his citizenship. As I just told you that tax incidence will depend upon whether the assessee was a resident or a citizen. So in this case, we have to take consider the residentship, not the citizenship. Residential status. Residence and citizenship are two different things. As I told you that I can be a citizen of India and I can be living and residing somewhere else. But let's suppose if someone who is UK or US citizen and who has been residing in India for a while, let's suppose for the previous year, so they have to pay the taxes accordingly. The incidence of tax has nothing to do with the citizenship. So that is right. You have to remember this because this is the main and the crux point of whole the residential status and citizenship. You have to remember this that the incidence of tax has nothing to do with the citizenship of the SSC. An Indian may be non-resident and a foreigner may be resident for income tax purposes. As I told you that I am holding Indian passport, I am an Indian citizen, but I am residing in UK for a while. So I'm a citizen. I am a resident of UK, but I am citizen of India. And on contrary, there is someone who is living in India, like a UK citizen for a while. So they are residing in India and they will be paying taxes to the Indian government. The residence of a person may change from year to year, but citizenship cannot be changed from year. Right. So changing citizenship, even if let's suppose I am an Indian citizen, I want to become a US or UK citizen, it will take a while. Why? Because there are certain terms and conditions that are being laid down by their government. You have to fulfill the criteria. Only after their approval you can be their citizen. So it's not very straightforward. But you can be a resident. I can easily go and reside there. So there's the difference that I can be a resident of any country, right? I can reside in UK, I can reside in US if I have any work over there. But citizen, you can be citizen of one country or two countries which allow dual citizenship. But getting a citizenship, changing a citizenship, it's not easy, and India does not permit for dual citizenship. Now, this is all about residence and citizenship. Now we have to determine the residential status of an individual, right? In the last class I talked about the person definition. The person definition consists of many: individual, Hindu undivided family, and associate of individuals, body of individual, associate of person, so AOP, BOI. So under the category of person there are so many categories that are mentioned. So individual, I'll be talking about individual strictly. So an individual can be a resident or non-resident. Further, if an individual is resident, he may be resident and ordinarily resident, or resident but not ordinarily resident. So if I have to explain you, let's suppose I'm an individual and an individual can be resident or non-resident. So either I could be resident or non-resident. But if I am resident, there are two bifurcation ahead. So I can be resident and ordinarily resident, or I could be resident and non-ordinarily resident. So that's possible only if I am a resident. If I am non-resident, I cannot come into these categories. Following are the rules. There are certain rules that you have to follow. Resident, an individual is said to be resident in India during the relevant previous year, because let's suppose we are talking about the assessment year of 2022 to 23 and the previous year is 21 to 22, right? If he or she satisfy at least a basic condition. So there are two basic conditions, we'll talk about them. If an individual, yet I am just strictly talking about an individual, I'm not talking about Hindu undivided family, I'm not talking about associate of persons or body of individual or a company. They have their different set of rules, and certainly, they, in many cases, they can either be resident or non-resident. They cannot be resident and ordinarily resident because that is not applicable to all. So we're talking about an individual here. So an individual is said to be resident in India during the relevant previous year if he or she satisfies at least one basic condition. So there are two basic conditions. If one of them is being satisfied, that individual be considered as resident. If none of the basic condition is being satisfied over there, that individual will be considered as non-resident for that previous year, because we are talking about for that previous year. Resident and ordinarily resident. An individual is said to be resident and ordinarily resident in India during the relevant previous year if he or she satisfy the basic condition and both the additional condition. So it is pretty much logical that if you want to be resident and ordinarily resident, firstly you have to satisfy one of the basic conditions. If you satisfy the basic condition, you become a resident. Now, if you have to become resident and ordinarily resident, you have to meet the both additional conditions. We'll talk about the additional conditions as well. They are very important for you guys to know. So, firstly, you can become a resident if you satisfy any of the basic conditions. There are two basic conditions. You have to make sure that you satisfy any of them. Now, once you satisfy the basic condition, you become the resident. Now we have to we have to see whether you are ordinarily resident or non-ordinary resident, because you have cleared the criteria of being a resident. So there are additional conditions given. So if you clear those, if you meet those additional conditions, you will be categorized as ordinary resident. And if you don't meet any of the additional condition, if you don't meet any of the additional condition, you will be categorized as non-ordinarily resident. So resident but not ordinarily resident. An individual is said to be resident but not ordinarily resident in India during the relevant previous year, because you have to remember we are talking about the relevant previous year and it will be given in the all the definitions. So an individual is said to be resident but not ordinary resident in India during the previous year if he or she satisfy basic condition. You have to satisfy basic condition, only then you can be categorized for ordinarily and or not ordinarily, but not additional conditions. So there are two additional condition as well. If you fail on meeting any of the additional condition, if you fail on meeting of any of the one additional condition, so you won't be categorized as resident and ordinarily resident. You will be categorized under resident and non-ordinarily resident. So you will be categorized under that. Lastly is NRI, non-resident India. An individual is said to be non-resident in India during the relevant previous year if he or she does not satisfy the basic condition. So if you don't satisfy the basic condition, even you won't be categorized as no, you will be categorized as non-resident of India. So as I said, the categorization is resident on the left, right, the non-resident. So if I meet the basic condition, I will be the resident, right? If I don't meet any of the basic condition, I will be considered as non-resident of India. Now coming to the resident part. If I'm considered as resident of the India, there are two additional conditions for making me as ordinarily resident or non-ordinary resident. So if I meet both the additional conditions, I will be considered as ordinarily resident. If I don't meet any of the, let's suppose I don't meet any of the one of the conditions, I won't be considered as resident. I will be considered as resident but non-ordinarily resident. So these are the classification. I hope I made myself very much clear, and it is bit confusing. I know it is bit confusing because you are going through, let's suppose you are revising this after a long time. So it might be confusing to some, but if you are very well versed with the income tax, it will be a cake of right. So it is all about the resident and non-resident.